Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya.
श्रीशैलेश दयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवं यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः. We continue with the exposition of the sutras. As I mentioned earlier, the word Narayana here is interpreted to mean the 6 important qualities of the Supreme Lord, namely Swamitva, Saushilya, Saulabhya, Jnana and Shakti. So what is the specific relevance of each of these qualities in the present context? That is mentioned in the Sutra number 23 and further also. Kutram Kande Veruvamaikivatsalyam Karyam Shayumendra Tunikkaikya Swamitvam. So how is the quality of Vatsalya relevant in the present context? How is the quality of Swamitva relevant in the present context? That is explained here. இக்குணங்களுக்கு இவ்விடத்தில் விநியோகங்கள் எவை என்ன வருளிச் செய்கிறார் குத்தங்கண்டு என்ன தொடங்கி, அதாவது ஆஸ்ரயணோன்முகமான இச்சேதனம் தன் தோஷத்தை பார்த்தஞ்சாமைக்கு உகப்பு தோஷத்தை போக்கியமாக கொள்ளும் வாத்சல்யம். So as we all discussed earlier and we have understood, the main feature of the quality of Vatsalya is enjoying the faults or fallacies of a person who is close to us. That is known as Vatsalya. So, Kuttam Kande Veruvamaikya Vatsalya. So, when the Supreme Lord, Narayana, sees the innumerable amount of sins that a Jivatma or individual soul has committed, it is natural that he despises him. But since he possesses the guna or the quality of Vatsalya, he does not despise the Chetana or the individual soul. On the other hand, since he is very close to him, since he has performed Sharanagati and him, he in fact enjoys the doshas, or he in fact relishes the sins committed by the Jivatma. That's what is mentioned here. But as I said, this has to be taken in a very balanced manner. Because here it says, Ashrayanon Mukhanana Ichetanan Tandoshatte Partha Anjamaikyu. So the individual soul should have completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord. Only then the Supreme Lord will enjoy the sins of the individual soul, not otherwise. Why I am mentioning this is that many people, this has been answered very beautifully in the Sri Bhashyam also. Many people, when they knowingly commit certain sins, I have seen many people or a few people that they will say, no, I am a Sharanagata, I am a Prapanna. So whatever I do, the Supreme Lord will protect me and He will forgive me, and not only forgive me, He will in fact enjoy the faults that I have committed. So I am free to commit any fault, and the Supreme Lord will protect me and He will enjoy it. Not only He will ignore it, He will also enjoy it, because that's what Vatsalya is all about. This is totally incorrect. As I said earlier, if a person has surrendered to the Supreme Lord, he cannot go astray, he cannot commit sins knowingly. Unknowingly, if he commits sins, those sins are pardoned by the Supreme Lord. So if he has done it, if he has committed a sin, or if he is committing a sin, then what happens? Gradually, the amount of sins that he commits has to reduce. Further, it is also to be noted that the frequency of the sins have to reduce. Suppose, as I mentioned in the modern context, suppose a person is addicted to alcohol or some sort of tobacco or something like that. He cannot give it up overnight. So what do they say? If you gradually reduce your intake of alcohol, you gradually reduce your intake of tobacco or whatever it is. So if you are smoking 10 times a day, you reduce it to 8 times, then 5 times, then 3 times, then once in 2 days, then once in 5 days, then once in 10 days, once in a month, then gradually. Because human nature is such that one can never come out of a vice very easily. In such a case where a person is on the path of redemption, when he commits some sins, then it is condoned by the Supreme Lord. So this many a times is in all religions, I understand this happens. So in all religions, people say the Supreme Lord will pardon me because I am surrendered to Him or something like that. I am His devotee. If he is really a devotee, he will never commit these sins, because there is a very beautiful saying, Paramatmaniyo raktaha viraktaha aparamatmani. If you are totally attached to the Supreme Lord, your other attachments will automatically vanish. On the other hand, if you are totally attached to worldly objects, then it means that you are not attached to the Supreme Lord. So this statement has to be very, very carefully understood and also interpreted. So Kutram Kandaha Veruvamaikyavatsanyam. Then Nankaryam Shayumo Shayavo Ven Shankaine Karyam Shayum Yen Vishwasikai Kuhappe Idavaperidan Tampadina Peridanadam Padina Swabitvam. Then, how is the quality of Swabitva relevant? So, when there is a doubt the Supreme in the mind of the individual soul, of course, the Supreme Lord has a lot of affection for me. But will He accept me or not? Then the answer is, He will accept because He is the Supreme. He is the Swami. He is the Master. He is the Lord, Supreme Lord. So He will never give me up. So He will protect me at all costs, because He is Sarvashakta. He is omnipotent. Therefore, this quality called Swamitva is very much relevant. Then the next quality is Saushilya. Ubhaya Vibhuti Kadavanayirikkum Perumaiki Prakashkamana Swabittattai Kande Swadikarishanusandhanattale Ahanami Kuhappe Taraninnavarhalode Urayarakkalakkum Swabhavamana Saushilyam. So what is Saushilya? In modern parlance, we actually say it is being easygoing, be mingling with the crowd. Many a times when we see in an assembly of people, suppose there is a Swamiji or something like that, some person like that, he will actually maintain a distance from the crowd. He will say, I want to have a separate peetham, separate chair, and he will be sitting on that. He will be sitting on a higher pedestal than the others, etc. Of course, not to say that that is wrong, but many a times it is done with a lot of ego in mind. That should not be the case. That is not called as Saushilya. So you should mingle with even very, very, very ordinary people, which is known as Saushilya. So, for example, in Ramanujacharya's story, we understand that one day when Ramanujacharya, he used to go to the river Kaveri to take bath. While going to take bath, that is before taking bath, he used to rest his hands on Dasharathi or Bogaliya, who was his own relative in his Purvashrama and also a very close devotee, or one of the closest devotees. But after taking bath, while coming back, he used to rest his hands on Villavuranga Villidasa or Dhanurdasa, who later became one of his closest disciples. So that means he did not give prominence to the community aspect, because this Dhanurdasa was born, he was not a Brahmin, he was born of a relatively lower caste. That means Ramanujacharya, in certain places, in certain circumstances, you have to underline all these things. He would not hesitate to transgress certain rules in certain circumstances. That doesn't mean that, because many times people argue or also firmly believe that Ramanujacharya did not advocate Varnashrama Dharma at all. In fact, he tried to break Varnashrama Dharma, which is totally incorrect, and Ramanujacharya never did that. But he said there are some exceptions when you actually don't give prominence to the Varnas or Ashramas of persons. But that should not be interpreted as he was against Varnashrama Dharma, etc. It is very, very, very important. So Saushilya is Mahataha Nirandrai Saha Samshlesha Saushilyam. That's what is mentioned in Sanskrit language. Even a very, suppose, in today's parlance, suppose the Indian Prime Minister, he comes to the army, or he comes to meet people from the army. He will just put his hand on the shoulder of an army man and say, how are you? Or something like that. So a Prime Minister is not expected to do that. But if he does it, it shows that he is a very easygoing person. He is a very simple person. His simplicity. That simplicity is known as Saushilya. So though the Lord is the Ubhaya Vibhuti Nayaka, he is the Lord of Nitya Vibhuti and Leela Vibhuti, he does not show it off. Many times when we see people, very wealthy people, they will come in a Rolls Royce car, then they will have their own act with an air of importance. They will behave as if they are totally different from all the other people. This is the opposite of simplicity or Saushilya. Whereas even the Supreme Lord, who is the Ubhaya Vibhuti Nayaka, as in the Krishna Avatara, he he mingled along with ordinary cowherds and he called himself a great cowherd. So that is what is known as Saushilyam. So in this context, Swanikareshanusandhanatale Ahanamik Kurup Tarninavarhalode Urayarakkalakum Swabhavamana Saushilyam. So he doesn't hesitate to mingle with people who are of a very, very, very lower stature, like ordinary people like us, the Jivatmas, though he is the Lord of the Nitya Vibhuti and Leela. So Nitya Vibhuti, we don't understand what it is because it is 3 times the Leela Vibhuti. Padosya Vishwa Bhutani Tripadasya Amritam Divi. That is why it is called as Tripad Vibhuti, or 3 times what is there in what we understand here. And this is called as Ekapad Vibhuti. That is 1 quarter. 1 quarter means not this earth or not this solar system. All the millions or billions of Andakatahas, the cosmic eggs, they are all Leela Vibhuti. Whereas that Nitya Vibhuti is thrice this Leela. So there is no, it does not have any borders at all. It is beyond any border. Because even the Gadyatriya Bhagavad Ramanujacharya says, Divya Varana Shata Sahasravrate, Divya Kalpakataru Pashobhite, Divyodhyana Shata Sahasra Koti Bhiravrate. How many divine gardens are there in Vaikuntha? He says Shata Sahasra Koti. Shata is 100, Sahasra is 1000, Koti is 10 million. So 100,000 into 10 million divine gardens are there in Vaikuntha. That means it is endless. So that is how many billion, 100,000 into 10 million is probably some trillions. Can we count it? Can we count 1 million? But he says there are 100,000, 10 million Divyodhyanas in the Vaikuntha. That means it is endless. That's what you can understand. So the Supreme Lord Narayana, who is the master of such a great Vaikuntha, as well as all these things, when he mingles with ordinary Jivatmas like us, that means that is the greatest depiction of his Saushilya. Then, Ati Indriyanyandre Pirkarya Markannale Kande Ashrai Kuhappe Tanvadivai Chakshur Vishayamat Hira Saurabhyam. So we all know that the Supreme Lord is beyond the grasp of our sense organs. So we know Namamsa Chakshuhu Abhivikshatetam, etc. This eye cannot cognize the Supreme Lord. But even then, he facilitates his own vision by becoming the subject of our vision so that we can approach him and surrender ourselves to him. It's very difficult to surrender to a person who is not seen, who is unseen, to a formless object. So the Supreme Lord is having such saurabhya. He is so easily approachable, or he becomes so easily approachable by showing himself to us so that we may approach him. So this is the greatest level of saurabhya, easy approachability that the Supreme Lord has, only the Supreme Lord has. Then, Sarva Papebhyo Mokshaishyami Yanjirapadiye Prapti Virodhi Pokki Prapyamanatannai Upakarikke Kuruppe Praptavanamivan Keel Ninda Nilayum Mer Podukku Mer Pokkadiyum Arikkayum Arindapadiye Shaide Talakkattaikum Ekantangalana Jnana Shakti Helyangai. So how are the 2 qualities of Jnana and Shakti relevant? Sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami. We all know the beautiful Jarama Shloka, Krishna Jarama Shloka that is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Ahantva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami mashutaha. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam. Give up all the dharmas, don't worry about the other dharmas. Perform sharanagati unto me. I will rid you of all the sins and I will see to it that you come to me. That is not said in explicit terms, but that is what it ultimately means. Because once the sins disappear, what happens? It is automatic, or it's a very natural progression that the Jivatma, or the supreme individual soul, attains the Supreme Lord. So the main impediment in our attaining the Supreme Lord are the sins that are committed by us knowingly and unknowingly. So aham tva sarva papebhyaha mokshayishyami. Supreme Lord says, I will deliver you. I will rid you of all your sins. So don't worry about it. All you have to do is you have to surrender totally unto me. So that's why he says, Virodhi Poki. What is the Virodhi? What is the impediment? The sin is the impediment, or the sins that we have committed are the impediments in our attaining Supreme Lord. So he himself will facilitate the ridding of all the sins. Then what happens? Prapyananatannai upakarikai kurupu. He will also facilitate our attaining the Supreme Lord. So, praptavanaivan keel ninna nilayam மேற்போக்கடிய கடியும் ஹரிக்கைக்கும் அறிந்தபடியே செய்து தலைக்கட்டுகைக்கும் ஏகாந்தங்களான ஞான சக்திகள். So he possesses both the knowledge and also the capacity to rid us of all our sins and accept and also facilitate the Jivatmas reaching the Supreme Lord. So these are the two most important qualities as far as this process is concerned, that is Jnana and Shakti. So this is how these 6 qualities are most relevant in the present context, and therefore the word Narayana is interpreted in this context as the possessor of these 6 gunas or qualities. So as I said earlier in one of the sessions, there might be several other 1,000 qualities that are there in the Supreme Lord, but they may not be relevant to us in the present context. So these are the 6 most important qualities that are extremely relevant and are most useful in the present context, and therefore the word Narayana is interpreted to be a person who possesses these most important and currently relevant 6 qualities. Then 24th Sutra. Ingachanna saurabhyatakka ella nilam archavataram idam paravyuha vibhangal polam nikke kannale kaanadam padirikkum ivaillam namakku namberumal pakkalide kaanadam. So then he branches off to one most important aspect of our Sri Vaishnava philosophy. So I am sure you are aware of the 5 different forms of the Supreme Lord, that is Para, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryami and Archa. So Para is the most supremest, if I may use that term, most supremest form, which is beyond the cognition of all persons. So it is known as Para. That is why he is known as Paravasudeva, or the Vasudeva who pervades the entire universe of hundreds or millions of universes, which you may call as one universe also from that point of view, and who is beyond the cognition of all these things. Then there is a slightly watered down version of the Supreme Lord, which is known as Vyuha. So he converts himself into this Vyuha form, which is Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Here there are two schools of thought, and I am sure Keshavdas would be very well aware of this. So that is Trivyuhavada and Chaturvyuhavada. So the Paravasudeva waters down his own nature and he comes down in the form of three Vyuhas, that is Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, according to one school of thought. Both are available in the Agamas itself, in the Pancharatra Agama. Whereas it is also mentioned that there is another Vasudeva in the Vyuha also. It is Vyuha Vasudeva. They call him as Vyuha Vasudeva. So Vyuha, the Chaturvyuhavada, or the school of thought that propounds four Vyuhas is Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Whereas the Trivyuhavada says, no, Vasudeva is Paravasudeva only. Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are the three Vyuhas. So these three are responsible respectively for the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. So here once again, you should not confuse this with the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva aspect. That is in the Pauranika. When you come to the Puranas, or according to the Puranic literature, that stream of thought is totally different from the Agama stream of thought. So in the Agama stream of thought, or the Pancharatra Agama stream of thought, even the Vaikhanas Agama, of course, we have the different forms, three forms of Vishnu. It is the Vyuha forms, namely Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, possessing all the six qualities of Jnana, Shakti, Bala, Aishwarya, Virya, and Tejas. But in each of these three forms, two qualities are on the ascendance, and the other four qualities are concealed. It is mentioned as Anabhivyakta in Sanskrit. So these are the three forms or four forms, however you like to take it. Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha are the four Vyuhas. So Para Vyuha. Then you have the Vibhavas. So Vibhavas are the incarnations, right from Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Vamana, Rama, Krishna, Kalki, etc. So these are known as the Vibhava forms. That is, they appear in the world in the form of animals or human beings or whatever it is. So that is Matsya, Kurma, and Varaha are in the form of animals. Narasimha it is mentioned to be the transition between animal and human being, because half lion and half human being. Then you have Vamana or Trivikrama. Then you have Parashurama, then Rama, then Krishna. Then according to some it is Buddha, according to some Buddha is not to be taken. That is another very important issue that many people don't know about what is the reality in that regard. So Buddha and then Kalki. So those who don't accept Buddha, they say it is Balarama. So let it be, we will not worry about that now. So these are the Vibhava avatars. Then Antaryami, the state of the Lord, who is the indweller of each and every object in this world. Whether it is an Achid Vastu, or insentient object, or sentient object like our Jiva. So that is known as Antaryami, or being inherently present in all objects and controlling them. Antah pravishya niyamayati iti Antaryami. Antah pravishya yamayati niyamayati. That means being the indweller of every entity, he controls that entity. So Antah pravishya niyamayati iti Antaryami. Then finally, the Archa form, or the iconic form, where he is present in the 108 chosen sites known as Divya Deshas, and also in innumerable, countless forms in each and every place wherever he has been consecrated. So Swami Pudalokacharya gives a very beautiful analogy. So he says, Perukkar pole vibhavangal So these vibhavas are like flash floods. Suddenly they come and then they go away. So can we see Lord Krishna now? No. So he could be seen only when he was present in the human form. Of course, the Tattva or the Paramatma Tattva is eternal. But the human form that he possessed cannot be seen now. Can we see Rama now? No. Then Bhogata Jalam Pole Antaryami. So this Antaryami form is like the water that is hidden deep inside the flowing in the earth. So you have to dig deep to find out where water is. Then finally he says, Adil Tengina Madukkal Pole Archavataram. So most of the Divyadeshas are the forms of Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, etc., etc., etc. So when the Vibhavas came in the form of flash floods, these flash floods are the floods that came during the Vibhava time. They actually settled in the form of small ponds. These ponds are, the Archa forms are like the ponds that were formed at that time. So they are fully influenced by the means of Vibhava avatars, but they continue to be here for a long time. We don't know. So he says, Adil Tengina Madukkal Pole Archavataram. Bhogata Jalam Pole Antaryami. Perukkar Pole Vibhavande. So he gives a very beautiful analogy of these five forms, that is Para, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryami, and Archa. So among these five, he says, the highest point of the Saulabhya or easy approachability is the Archavataram or the Archa form or the iconic form. That is why the Archavatara is given the greatest prominence. Because the Lord subjects himself to any sort of activity that the Archaka does. That is why it is mentioned in the works, Archaka Paradhina Kilatma Sthiti. So he himself becomes totally subservient to the Archaka, or the person who performs the puja or worship. So today now, 8 o'clock you want to offer something to the Lord, you want to offer some milk, yes, he'll say, okay, I'll accept it. Today you don't offer anything also, he will not say anything. Tomorrow suddenly you offer about 20 different types of food to him, prasadams. He'll say, okay, fine, I will accept it. So today if you want to perform Abhishekam, he'll say, okay. Tomorrow if you say, I will not perform Abhishekam, I will not even perform ordinary Abhishekam, he'll say, okay, fine. Because he has given himself to the control of the Archakas. So that is why it says, Archaka Paradhina Akila Atma Sthiti. I will give a very simple or very bad example, don't mistake. So in India, if you want to grow your money, I don't know how it is in the US, so I'll give in the Indian context only. So if you put it in a fixed deposit in the bank, it will earn you only 5% return. So if you want it to earn 10% or 15% return, then you have to invest it in some financial companies where the risk is more. So if you are growing it at 5% where you put it in a post office or a bank, the risk factor is almost nil, but you will not earn more than 5%. Many times they say you will not be able to beat the inflation also. Because inflation rate might be 8% and your money will be growing at 5%. So the value of the money will be less after a particular period of time if you don't invest in a high risk country. So suppose you invest in some mutual fund. Your return is 15%, but the risk is so much high. You are not assured. Suppose you want to invest it in a startup or something like that. You may get a return of 50% or 60%, but the risk is very, very high. You may lose your entire money also. So always the risk factor is proportional to the growth factor. The more the scope for growth, the more the scope for losing your money. Similar is the case of Archavatara, because he is very, very, very easily approachable. At the same time, it is very, very, very easy to commit sins with regard to the Archa form. That is why in the Agamas, they list out 32 different types of Archa, Daiva Apachara. I have written an article on that, on this aspect itself, which are the types of Daiva Apachara that can actually be committed by a devotee while performing puja to the Archa form. So it's very difficult. And in the Archa form, the Lord never, for ordinary people like us, that has to be underlined, the Lord never says, he never gives any reaction. So whatever you feel towards the Lord, that feeling is reciprocated by the Lord. So if you scold the Lord, he will not say anything. If you beat him also, he will not say anything. If you worship him, he will accept the worship. If you don't worship, he will not say anything. So dealing with the Lord in the Archa form is, though we say the highest point of the best way that the Lord shows his saurabhya or easy approachability is Archavatara. The highest risk of committing sins towards the Archa form of the Lord is also there. Or the risk factor is highest in this case. That is why even after performing Thiruvaradhanam, what is the last thing? He says, Upachara padeshena kritana haraharmaya apachara animam sarvan shamasva purushottama. I have performed so many acts or deeds with regard to you as upacharas, as worships. But they may all have become apacharas to you. I don't know. So, upachara padeshena kritana haraharmaya apachara animamsa. So, upachara is some act that is done to act of worship, act of offering something. It might be in the form of some ritual water or snanas, alankaras, navodjas, etc. Yes, upachara is service. Apachara is a sin that is committed towards him. So every upachara or service may have resulted in an apachara, or it might have become an apachara or offense itself. So kindly forgive me, pardon me for all the offenses I have committed in the form of services. So that's what we, or all the persons who perform Thiruvaradhanam, have to say in the end and beg for the pardon of the Supreme Lord. So the reason is that this is the highest or the best point or the best way of the Lord showing his easy approachability is the Archavatara. So the Sri Vaishnava tradition gives utmost prominence to the Archa form of the Supreme. So all that has to be kept in mind in this context. So it says, Idadan paravyuha irangal polan nikke kannale karnam padirakam. So all the other forms, paravyuha, vivaha, antaryami, they cannot be seen by the outer eye or this eye which we possess. Whereas the Archa form is the only form that can be seen by the naked eye. So this is commented upon here. And he says, Ididan todangi Ravade Varchavatarandan Desha Viprakrishtadeya Desha Viprakrishtadeya Le Kandiktu Vishayamahada பரவியூகங்களும் கால விப்ரகிருஷ்ணங்களாகையாலே கண்ணுக்கு விஷயமாகாதபடி போன விபவமும் போலன்னிக்கே ஆசன்னமாய் அனவரத சந்நிதி பண்ணிக் கொண்டிருக்கையாலே அரவரதம் கண்ணாலே காணலாம் படி இருக்கும் என்கை. Para and Yuha are beyond our sight because they are far, far, far from it. Vibhava is beyond our sight because of the time gap. Para and Yuha are beyond our vision because of the gap in the place or the gap in space. Vibhava is not cognizable by us because of the time gap. So Vibhava happened several thousands of years ago or millions of years ago, whereas we are now here in this Kali Yuga. Therefore, he says, Asannamai Anavarata Sannidhi Pandirikkondirukkayale. This Archadara is very close to us. So if I want to go to Srirangam from here, it's a matter of 8 hours, not more than that. Or in a good car, you may reach in 6 hours. Anavaratam, and you can keep on seeing the Archa form. You can enjoy the form for hours on end. Nobody can prevent you. Of course, they may not allow you in the temple. That's a different. Assuming that they allow you to sit inside the temple or near the sanctum. You can just keep on seeing the Supreme Lord or the Lord of Srirangam, who is known as Namberuma or Lord ours, as a person has translated his name. For any amount of time, nobody can say no. So, Gudangalellam Archa Avatarattile Kananamo Vinna Arudiche Hirarivayellam Namakka Namberumal Pakkalile Kananam Yendri. So all these qualities are directly verifiable when we think about the Supreme Presiding Lord of Srirangam, who is known as Namberumal, or our verily our own Lord. அதாவது சௌகரியாபாதகமாகவும் காரியாபாதகமாகவும் சென்னை குணங்களெல்லாம் இவை காண்கையாலே அபேட்சை உடைய நமக்கு உடைய பெருமாள் பக்கலிலே காணலாம். So he says Namberumal பக்கலிலே காணலாம். So he says, but here Swami Manavala Mamani does not say it as the Supreme Lord of Srirangam. He says Namperumal. That means all the Archa forms of all the 108 Divya Deshas and also, of course, the Abhimani Sthalas, like Rajamannar, Kudiyar, Melkote, or things like that, or places like that. Tirukkaiyile piditha divyayudangalum vaittanjalen indrahayum கவித்த முடியும் முகமும் உருவலும் ஆசன பத்மத்திலே அழுத்தின திருவடிகளுமாய் நிற்கிற நிலையே நமக்கு தஞ்சம். So this Archa form is further explained. What are the unique features of the Archa form, which is explained in the next sutra. We will discuss about this sutra in the next class. Thank you very much. Any questions or discussions are welcome.
Swami, regarding the, thank you very much for the discussion about 5 forms, Paravyuha, Vibhava, Antaryama, and Archa. As far as the Archa form is concerned, we have different Archa Vigrahas. We have forms of the Supreme Lord. We have forms of goddesses like Sri Devi, Bhudevi. We have forms of Alvars. We have forms of Acharyas.
Sorry. Now, please repeat the question.
Yeah, so there are different Archa avatar. There are different Archa forms in the temples and in the houses. We have forms of. I'm sorry, maybe a bad connection from me. We have forms of the Supreme Lord. We have forms of the goddesses like Sri Devi and Bhudevi. We have forms of Alvars. We have forms of Acharyas. Right. So there may be a little bit of difference in the way that we worship these different forms. Of course, we worship the Supreme Lord and we worship the goddesses and we worship the Alvars and we worship the acharyas in some different ways. Sometimes it's difficult to understand exactly which category some forms come in. For example, with the Chakradalwar. Chakradalwar, on the reverse side of Chakradalwar, we see one Narasimha with 4 chakras. So Chakradalwar is an ayuda. He's a weapon of the Lord. Is he Ishvara Tattva or is he Chit Tattva? Is he?
See, there are very good question. First of all, there are 2 types of bimbas or 2 types of archa forms. One is the Swami Bimba and another is the Bhakta Bimba. So Swami Bimba is the form of the Supreme Lord Narayana and of course Lakshmi also, who is an integral part of Lord Narayana. But she is both separate as well as one. So that's another issue we'll not go into right now. So that is they are the Supreme Lords. So they are the Swami Bimbas. Then you have the Bhakta Bimbas. You have the Alvars, Acharyas, etc. And among the Acharyas, especially in the Tannacharya Sampradaya, even Vadala Sampradaya, later they have done some additions. That is not, some people have, some mutts have done some additions. Let us not worry about some individual case. With Tannacharya Sampradaya, they have made a rule that so Manavana Mavani or Varavara Muni is the last Acharya for whom we will have a iconic form. So we don't have an iconic form for others who succeeded Manavana Mavani. Of course, in individual houses or in individual some temple, they might have consecrated some the form of some Acharya who belong to a recent time or something like that. That is purely individual. But the tradition is you have iconic forms in all temples only up to Manavana, not beyond that. In the Vadakalai Sampradaya, we have forms only up to Vedanta Deshika and not beyond that. Individually, there might be some exceptions. That is not very important. There are exceptions. That's all. They are not there. So what was your question? Yeah. What about Chakratan? So Sudarshana is the, once again, just like you have a different place and different temple for Lakshmi. So when you study the Agamas or the evolution of temples in a historical perspective, so don't misunderstand me because there might be some misunderstanding in this regard. We find that the Lakshmi temples are the Tayar Samidhis for a later edition. They were not there earlier. So that is well documented fact as far as Agamas are concerned. So just like you have a separate sanctum sanctorum for Goddess Mahalakshmi, you also glorify the Ayudha of the Supreme Lord. What is the Sudarshana? Sudarshana is the Jnana Shakti of the Supreme Lord. So you glorify the Lord as if having Shankha, Chakra, etc., etc., etc. And therefore you worship only that particular Shakti also of the Supreme Lord who resembles the Lord. That is why when we say Sarokya, Sarupya, Samipya and Savidya. So Sarupya is even the Muktatma is endowed with Shankha, Chakra, etc. Just like the Supreme Lord. That is why even Vishwaksena has Shankha and Chakra, as you can see in the temples. So when Vishwaksena himself has Shankha and Chakra, Sudarshana, who is the Achintya Divya Shakti or the divine power of the Supreme Lord, why he cannot have Shankha? So later there have been instances where the Sudarshana, if you go to Tirumohu near Madurai, he's having 32 different types of weapons. Shankhan Chakram Chachapam Parasham Yasumishon Shula Pashan Kushagni Vibranam Vajraketam Hanamusala Gada Kuntamatyugradam Stram Jwala Kesham Sunetrinetram Jaladanarnibham Harakeyo Rapusham Jaya Chatkona Samstam Sakalaripujana Prada Samhari Chakram. So Sudarshana has so many. Then you have in another Divya Desha, he has 64 weapons. Then I have also seen in one place 128 weapons have been there. That means the manifestation of the divine power of Lord Vishnu can happen in so many ways. So those are the vigrahas of the icons are consecrated after a person has a divine vision of that particular form, and then only it is actually transformed into a physical form outside. It's very, very important. How did this form come into existence? First, it is a divine vision, a vision of an otherworldly nature, in which the person is able to cognize this particular form. Then it is transferred into the form of an icon. And Sudarshana is what? Sakala Ripujana Prana Samhari. So Sudarshana and Narasimha are the Samhara Murtis. There, the main task of Sudarshana and Narasimha is to destroy. That is why Narasimha also has 3 eyes. Sudarshana also has 3 eyes in this sloka. Shankan Chakram Sachapam Marivi Vadrakedam Anamujjala Kesham Trinetram. So these are the different specific utilities of those particular forms. That is why they are endowed with certain different forms, like having 3 eyes, then having these different weapons, which are purely intended to kill. Kill not physically, but kill in a different sense altogether. So these are the certain, just like the goddess Lakshmi, who is the divine power of the Lord, Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta. So she is nothing but Vishnu Shakti, who is given a separate form and worshipped in a separate temple, or in a separate room, or separate sanctum. The Sudarshana, who is the Ajintya Shakti of the Supreme Lord, is given a separate form. He is once again manifested as in a human form, along with several new weapons, and he is worshipped. So worshipping ultimately what happens, it is all the worship of the Supreme Lord Vishnu Narayana.
So is there a difference between the Alvars are supposed to be Amsa avatars of the different Ayudas, and
of course. Alvars are also supposed to be the avatars, but not in the sense of Matsya, Kurma, etc. That is why when the prasadam is offered, first it is offered to the Supreme Lord, then Lakshmi, and then to all the bhaktas. In any temple you go. Even after Sudarshana, Alvar, and Vishwaksena, etc., that is the Parivara Devatas, then it is offered to the Alvars and the other acharyas. So there is a very, very specific hierarchy.
So we have Adishesha, Vishwaksena.
Adishesha are all the Parivara Devatas of the Supreme Lord. So you have Ananta, Garuda, Vishwaksena, etc., etc., etc.
Right. So the different Ayudas and Bhushanas, the weapons and the ornaments of the Lord, are considered more integral to the Lord than the Parivara Devatas, the Vishwaksena, Adishesha, Garuda.
Yes, they also have almost on equal or on par with the Supreme Lord.
Right. So the Ayudas and Bhushanas are more important than the Adishesha, the Parivara Devatas, including the Dwarapalakas like Jaya Vijaya, Chanda Prachanda, like that.
Yes.
Okay. So can I ask also the Lord's Paduka, right? Adishesha takes the form of his bed and sometimes his pillow, and he can take other forms for the Lord. That is mentioned in the shloka itself.
Nivasa, Shayya, Asana, Paduka, Amshuka, Upadhana Varshatapavaranadhi, Sharira Bhedaihi, Tavasheshatanandapaihi.
Yes,
So he lists out all the different forms Adishesha has taken.
yes, yet we say we identify the Lord Setari, his Paduka, right, with Vishvaksena rather than Adishesha, with Sadakopan, Namalwa.
Yeah, Namalwar, yes, correct.
Okay,
That
so
is because Nama.
is it Adishesha or is he Amsavatar of Namalwa, of Vishvaksena?
That doesn't see that thing should not be confused with this, because there is another statement which says Vishwakseno Yatipati Rabhute Vetrasarasthidenda. Vishwaksena himself incarnated as Ramanujacharya also. So that is an emotional statement. It says, oh, probably Vishwaksena himself has become Namanda, Vishwaksena himself has become Ramanujacharya, etc. So that is an emotional statement. So that should not be equated with the Shastric statements. That will lead to a lot of confusion and it will lead to several inconsistencies.
So as far as the Shastric statement is concerned, we have to, when we do Setari Pratishta, we have to consider the Shetari to be an expansion of Adishesha or of Vishvaksena.
No, neither Adishesha nor Vishwaksena, because if it were to be Adishesha, then how do we place the Shetari at the head of Vishwaksena and Adishesha, etc.? So Shetari is divine feet of the Lord. It is known as Shetari because we have glorified the Nammalvar as Shetari. Actually, in the Agamic parlance, Shetari is nothing but a yantra actually. We have given that name of Nammalvar to glorify Nammalvar because he was the greatest of the great devotees. So from the point of the Agama tradition, in that before, because the Shetari concept came much before Nammalvar appeared. So it is purely the divine feet of the Lord, which can be carried around.
So Shetari Pratishta is just like installing the Lord.
Yes, it's
Yes.
like installing the divine feet of the Lord. Because see, when you have a huge icon of the Lord, he cannot be moved around easily. And suppose we always want to have the feet of the Lord on our head. So how can you physically place the feet of the Lord on his head, on a person's head? So the rishis of the Agamas who had the divine visions, according to the will of the Lord, they have prepared the Shetari, which is actually a yantra. So that is why it is a conical mount, which is like this, on which the two divine sandals of the Lord are placed.
Right, the Pitam is
Later
there.
that came to be known as Nammanda, by the name Nammanda.
Okay. Yeah. So just if there's I have to understand this, because if we do a ceremony for doing a Shetari Pratishta, right, we have to treat it like the same as if we're installing a deity of the Supreme Lord. Because there are several differences in installing the Lord's Archamurti and the goddesses and the Bhaktabimbas and the Parivara Devatas and the Alvars. These are all mostly Bhaktabimbas. And even goddesses, although you talk of Lakshmi being the same as the Supreme Lord, purely Vishnu Shakti, still there's a thing called Soda Sannyasa and Soda Sahoma, which is not performed for Lakshmi, which is not performed for Alvars, which is not performed for Bhaktabimbas. So, but you're saying that the Setari is Shakshat Narayana. It's definitely the
yes,
Supreme
Lord. Of course. See, you have not only this, you have Ratha Pratishta, you have Braja Pratishta, you have Gopura Pratishta.
Yeah, Ratha Pratishta. I know. I'm studying at the moment.
And one more thing is, the Shetari it's actually a yantra that is placed on the head of all the bhaktas.
Right. So but even in the Matapali, they have Pratishta they will do Ganta Pratishta, they'll do the the Vatal Pratishta, everything will have Pratishta.
Yes. So you have to invoke the divine force in each and every object. That is the important thing. And one more aspect is Shatari Pratishtha is done separately, because suppose there is a new temple. This I don't know whether you have.
Yeah, you told it before. It's kept in an ancient temple first and then brought to the new temple.
Because that Divya Desha Sambandha, or the relationship with the Divya Desha, is very important. So that is the which I have already told.
So I think Govindachari has one more question for you, Swami.
As we see Archa, however, for example, Gaudiya say more accessible than the Archa is Nama. It's also the form of God and not different to the God. Yes, so this is they are not Archa form and Nama form are not contradictory to each other. So we may not say that they are contradictory, they are complementary to each other.
Yeah, he's just asking if people say that the Archamurti is in the temple, but maybe I cannot go to the temple, or I cannot see Archavatar all the time. Even even for Namparamal, we have to wait for him to come in procession, Parapada, around the temple to see him. But the Harinama or the Ramanama we can chant anytime, everywhere, any place, and so it's more accessible than the Murti form of the Lord.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we can accept that there is nothing wrong. Yeah, you feel there is some contradiction in the statements? I don't see any contradiction.
No, he's just saying, some people are making that argument. They're saying that here we're saying that the Archavatar is the most accessible, but even more accessible is the Ramanama or the Harinama. That's the argument.
See, there are two issues here. So can you see an explicit form in Rama? So that's why I want to differentiate. I can go deep into the subject and discuss. See, the Nama is in the form of a sound. Archa is the form of a three-dimensional entity. So now I want to perform Abhishekam. Can I perform Abhishekam to a Nama? No. That is why I said these are not contradictory. This form is different, that form is different. They are not totally comparable to each other. On the other hand, see, if you want to, when you want to mention the glory of Nama, then you say it is more accessible than Archa, fine, we accept it. But suppose I have to do some offering, I want to do Naivedyam. Can you do Naivedyam to the Nama? If the question is no. So that is why we should not take this as contradictory. This is mentioned so to glorify the aspect of Nama. You say it is even more accessible than Archa because you can be sitting in your bed or even in the toilet and you can do Ramanama Japa. Sorry if I mentioned it in a very crude manner, which cannot be done with regard to Archa form. You have to take bath, you have to be pure, you have to have newly washed clothes, which is not touched, etc. You have to follow several rules. Whereas that doesn't apply to Nama. That's why even when you are brushing your teeth, you can, in your mind, you can do Nama Japa, you can do. So it is easy. Yes, we accept that.
Some people are also
making that Archa form is of an inferior or it is more, because the nature of Archa form is, as I said, it's a three-dimensional form. Whereas Nama is of the form of a sound. So it's not, that way you cannot compare those two in very strictly speaking.
See, Archa also can be in the mind. Archa also can be two-dimensional as a picture. These are all different forms of Archa. So if we chant Harinama, are we not also invoking the Archa avatar in the mind?
If you are invoke and do, then that is a different. But if you invoke the Nama itself without Archa, remembering the Archa form, if you do Nama, that is also accepted. See, once it becomes very subtle, you don't actually say this is great, that is great, etc. So when you want to explain the greatness of some particular form, you say this is more accessible than this. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So,
But that should not be taken as a debate.
right. Okay.
So
then
now you have to.
you're expressing the qualities of something, and it's hyperbole. You are praising each thing separately, and both are the best. Unlike
Yes.
unlike
And they also converge. They also converge when you are performing
Manasika
puja.
Radha.
When you are performing puja, you also do Nama Japa, because everywhere in the Pancharatrangama you say Mula Mantrena. So you chant the Mula Mantra 6 times. That means, are you not performing Nama Japa? You are doing that also while you are doing Tiruvaradhana.
Some Vaishnavas are making also a distinction between Nama, Ramanama or Harinama, and mantra, in the sense of mantra is using Chaturthi Vibhakti, dative case, and Nama is using Sambodhana Pratama Vibhakti.
See, there is everywhere there are several aspects that need to be discussed. See, mantra means it has several rules and regulations that are to be followed when they have to be chanted, etc. Whereas Nama can be chanted anytime. Yes, that aspect is there. But here now, for example, when you say Om Namo Narayanaya or something, it's a full sentence. When you are saying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, it is only the names. So does this form a sentence?
There's no dhatu. No dhatu.
Huh?
There's no dhatu. There's no verb. There's no
kriyapada. There is no verb.
No kriyapada. Yes.
Or a verb, the noun that is equivalent to the verb as in nama. So which of these is better means? So in the beginning, to chant the name, that itself will lead you to wherever it has to lead you. Then as you become evolved, you will chant Om Namo Narayana. Then you chant the Dvaya Mantra, etc. So there are different stages. It's not like it's like asking when you want to learn playing football. First, the coach will ask you. He'll just ask you. You run 10 rounds around the ground. So if a person asks, no, first you have to start kicking the ball. Why are you running? So unless you are able to run so fast, so around the ground, how can you cover when you are doing this? So in the beginning, you just chant the namas, where your concentration levels, etc., will improve to a particular extent. Then you chant the Ashtakshara Mahamantra, which has certain rules and regulations attached to it.
So even
so
here,
it's a natural progression actually.
Right.
It's not like this is great. This is so without the power to run, how can you become a footballer?
Right.
So these are all different components. It's not like this is against that, this is great, that is great, etc.
So
if you are seeing strictly from this sadhana point.
Even here in Mumuksupadi, in the Astakshara Prakaranam, we're seeing that Hilalokacharya and Manavala Muni, they're first of all explaining each word, and Omkara, they're explaining Akara, Ukara, Makara, like that. So everything is taken from small and then elaborated. And then, of course, Astakshara, then Dvaya, then Charamasloka. So everything is getting more elaborate. In the same way in Mantra Shastra, they start out with Bija mantras, and then Mula mantras, and then Gayatri mantras, and then Mala mantras come last because they are the longest ones. So it's a progression. Each mantra means the same. The Astakshara means the same as Omkara. The Dvaya means the same as Akshas, and the Charamasloka means the same as Dvayam, but it's expanded.
Correct.
Yeah. So
if you want to see, make a now you means not you. If a person wants to debate and say this is great and that is not great, etc. If it's a healthy debate, fine. But as such, I feel that there is not any difference to say this is inferior, that is superior.
Right. I think you answered very well and everything, Swami. I think Govindacharya. I think.
And if I am wrong, you can point out where I am wrong, and I am ready to correct myself also. Not that whatever I tell or think independently is correct. So if I am wrong, you please point out to me that you are wrong in this place, and I am ready to correct myself.
Yeah, he's asking one more question here: whether we should offer tirtham to Visvaksena before taking the tirtham ourselves at the end of Tiruvaradan.
No. See, I'm sure Keshav you will be very well equipped to answer this question. First it is offered to the Lord, Lakshmi, etc. Then it is offered to all the Parivar Devatas, and then to the Alvars and Acharyas also, and then only we take it. So you have 5 vessels. That is Argya, Padya, Achamaniya, Snaniya, and Shuddhodaka or Sarvarthitoya. Then in some places they have one separate vessel which is known as Acharya Tirtha, which is separately, exclusively kept for offering to the Acharyas. But ultimately what happens, see, there are 2 issues. One is in the beginning in the Tiruvaradna Kramam. See, this I'll tell about it in detail in the next class. We have to understand the context and also what happened during the Parashara Bhattar's time, what happened and how it used to happen. I will narrate a very beautiful anecdote. So about that I'll tell in the next class. You please remind me.
So Swami, the water from the Acharya Toya Patram or Vatil is kept separately in a separate pela, a separate Visarjaniya Patra, right? And that becomes the Sripada Tirtha.
No,
right?
Sripada Tirtham
of
that is another Acharya. Sripada Tirtham of a person who is alive. He is different.
No, not necessarily.
Sripada Tirtham of the Acharyas means, now, for example, in Ahomal Matam, they have these separate sandals. So that is not at all mixed with this, that is totally kept separate and given separately also. But to the Acharyas, until Manavada Mamuni, whatever is offered, that is mixed in the Pratigraha Patra, and there is no doubt about it.
So that when we're offering to the Acharyas, right, from the Acharya Toya Patram, then that goes in the same pela, in the same Visarjani as the Lord.
Same Pratigraha Patra it goes.
Pratigraha Patra, okay, as the Lord, okay.
That is true even in Melkote temple or any temple you can see that.
Okay.
So first it is offered to the Lord and his consorts, Sri Devi, Bhudevi. Then the same water is offered to Ramanujacharya also, who is present there on this. And then it is all taken in the same Pratigraha Patra.
Right. So the question becomes, when we offer the tirtha to all the others, we offer the tirtha starting with who do we offer the tirtha to first? You said we're offering it to all, to the goddesses also?
To the who?
Do we start with Vishvaksena? Who do we offer tirtha to first?
No.
Perumal tirtha.
No, Perumal, see, Vishvaksena and others are all part of the Kovil Alvar itself. That is they are present in the main
right.
What they call Kovil Alvar, are the main box which houses all the deities, including the Acharyas until Manavada. So first it is offered to the Lord and to the Acharyas also. There itself, at that time itself. The Lord and the Parivar Devatas and the Acharyas.
Right. So when we
there
offer,
also, if you have Saligramam, you have to offer to Saligramam first, then to the deity who is in the Archa form. That is another issue.
Okay. Okay. But
because Saligrama, the presence of the Lord in Saligrama is more exalted than the presence of the Lord in the Archa forms. Because Saligrama has no pratishtha. Even if you don't perform puja for 10 years, next day you can just bring the Saligrama and do abhishekam with milk and water, and then you can put it in your Kovil Alvar directly. Whereas for the other Archa forms, you cannot do that. You have to do pratishtha once again.
Right.
So first you have to offer to Saligrama, even among the forms of Vishnu itself, you have to offer to Saligrama first. Then you offer to the Archa form, who is having the Shankha Chakra and all the Abhaya or the Mudra, etc.
Right, but once we have all the water which is offered and becomes holy as tirtha, as the remnants of the Lord and the salagrama,
Yes.
then that water is that remnants of that water is offered to who first?
Only devotees.
Right, not to any of the
Already you have offered it to them. Why you are offering it again to them? See, in the Tiruvaradhana Kramam, offering to all the deities, including the Anantagaruda Vishaksena and Parankusha Parakala Etivara, etc., until Manavada Mamani is included. So why do you offer it? Even in the Naivedyam, you offer to all of them. So why do you once again offer what is already offered? You cannot offer to once again to anybody.
Okay, clear.
So entire until Manavada Mamani, everybody you offer first. Then only it becomes Tirtham in Shatmari, etc. Then it is offered to the devotees. That is the person who performs the puja or Tiruvaradhanam and all the other people who are assembled there.
Right, and once again, the making of Sripada Tirtha is a completely separate system of worship of the persons, the Acharya's Paduka.
That is now suppose I have my great grandfather's Paduka, his father's Paduka, etc. Then that is done separately. And if when my father was alive, we used to on specific days like his birthday, etc., we will have his Sripada. That is kept separate. That is not mixed or even kept next to the Tirtham. That is next to the Perumal Tirtham. But that is not, though our Acharya's Tirtham is very sacred to us, it cannot be mixed with Perumal Tirtham. And always you have to give Perumal Tirtham first and then only the Sripada. In all, throughout Sri Vaishnava, I think it is practiced like that.
And
though we say Acharya is greater than that, that's a different. That's why you should not confuse the contexts.
Right. And I've seen that mostly Acharya Tirtham or Sripada Tirtham is only offered to those persons who are the actual Shishas.
There are two schools of thought that only those Shishyas have to have. But generally, it's not like that. Others also can have. There's nothing wrong in that. And in some tradition, it is offered twice. In some traditions, it's offered thrice. That's a different thing. Once again, there is a saying in Kannada, Sandhya Vandane Savira Pata. There are 1,000 versions of Sandhya Vandane. Like that, there are several versions. See, as long as they are not against the original spirit, there is nothing wrong in having different versions. In the Andavan Ashram, for example, there are some 14 different padukas of all the acharyas, separate. So 14 times they give tirtham every day. It's a very, very cumbersome process. But they are following it. It is their tradition and they are following it. That's all we can say. Srimate Ramananda.
श्रीशैलेश दयापात्रं दीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
ॐ